So Timothy's on his way. We saw that in verse 15, if I'm not mistaken. Verse 10, there we are, yes. Verse 10. Timothy's on his way. Apollos threw the towel. He left. So right now, at this moment, they are pastorless. But the provisional pastor is going to be Stephana and such people that work with him. And this is the reason why he urges them to be subjected to their teaching. For a person, a believer, cannot learn Bible without a pastor teacher. Every believer must ask. First of all, he must use 1 John 1:9. But every believer must ask God for the right pastor. There's a right pastor for everyone. There's a right pastor for an advanced pastor for those who need more advanced doctrine, a cheaper pastor for those who still need the basics, etc. Sorry, I didn't want to use the word cheap, but yes, there are some Mickey Mouse teachings going around, especially today in apostate Christianity in the United States. So there's a pastor for everyone. And when a believer begins advancing, and he needs a new pastor, you bet that God is going to provide him and transfer him to another pastor who teaches more advanced doctrine. If the believer is not ready for advanced doctrine, meaning that he's negative towards doctrine, he's not really interested, well, God is not going to provide that more advanced pastor. So there's one for everyone. Whether the pastor is advanced and fulfilling the Lord's work, or whether the pastor is apostate. Okay, verse 17 now. Chairo, de, connective, and chairo, present active indicative, I rejoice, I continuously rejoice, and then epi plus the dative of parousia. I rejoiced upon parousia, the coming. He went. Estefana, we're going to talk about Stefana, who we just mentioned right now. Upon the arrival of Stefana, this is the genitive, the arrival of Stefana. Kai, and he's going to mention other advanced believers from Corinth. Fortunatus, Fortunatu, and of Fortunatus, Kai, and Achaikos. Here we have Achaiku. So three people who are advanced from Corinth who are advancing in the plan of God. I rejoice, I continuously rejoice upon the arrival of Stephanas, Fortunatus, and Achaikos. Choti here because it's causal, because, and we look for the verb. Because, well, first of all, you see here this nominative, hutos, these types, pointing back to the antecedent, which is Stephana, Fortunatus, and Achaikos. These, anapleirosan, and this is a compound word, aorist active indicative of anapleiro. First of all, pleiro means to fill up a deficiency. Ana, here, it means to do it over and over and over and over again. Meaning that these folks, when they arrived, they filled up a deficiency inside of Paul's spirit. Human spirit, not the Holy Spirit, human spirit. This is a constitutive aorist, meaning that all the time, the whole time that they were there, Stephanas, Fortunatus, and Achaikos, they kept on filling and filling and filling. The active voice, they produced the action of the verb, and the indicative mood, this is for the reality that they brought good news, that their spiritual growth boosted up Paul's human spirit. These have continuously filled. Sorry, let's go back. Let me see. Have replaced, not make up, no. Filled. I'll get the translation right now. I'll remember right now. I should have written it down. That these types filled again and again, humeteron, your, this is possessive, humeteros, your hustereima, your lack. In other words, the lack of the Corinthians, they're reversionists, they're not advancing in the plan of God. This causes distress in Paul. There's one thing about being distressed in the soul, and that could be because a person is in the cosmic system, he's controlled by the sin nature. But there's another thing, to be distressed inside of a human spirit. And this, many times it happens, especially if you're advanced like Paul. When something is not going the way according to God's plan, so to speak, when someone is not advancing who has received teaching, doctrinal teaching for 10 years, 11, 20 years, and he's not advancing, it's inevitable that your human spirit is going to be in distress. And so these men came, they're doctrinally advanced, and so they filled that deficiency over and over again, deficiency that the Corinthians lacked. Let's look at the translate. How do they translate it in the NIV? Verse 18. For they refreshed my... verse 17. I was glad when Stephanas, Fortunatus, and Archius arrived, because they have supplied what was lacking from you. So I have a hard time finding a way to use one word to explain filling and filling again and filling again a deficiency. These have filled over and over again for your lack. There we go. And here is going to explain, because God, post-positive God, because anepausan, this is the aorist active indicative, anapauo, it's a compound word. Pauo means to stop. Ana means over and over and over again. They have stopped. To pneuma emon. They have stopped over and over again my human spirit, my spirit. Stopped them from what? Stopped them from the distress, from the worry that these Corinthians are not advancing in the plan of God. They received doctrines, and now they're listening to the Judaizers. They've gone to the point of rejecting the resurrection of Christ, etc. And so this causes distress in the human spirit, but the presence of Fortunatus, Archaikos, and Stephanas has paused their human spirit, and this resumes the refreshment. So yes, we translate a refresh. It has allowed their human spirit to rest. For they refreshed my do emon. This is an adjective. Notice that many times we use mu as a genitive. Here is an adjective. My human spirit, Kai, and yours, y'all human spirits. Even you, Corinthians, who are negative, are being refreshed by such types. That's the reason why he tells them in verse 15 and 16 to consistently be subjected to such types. And now here's the order: epignoskete. It doesn't say gnoskete, it says epignoskete. Present active imperative of epignosko. Remember, epignosis and gnosis. Here is telling him to know such types, to put them inside of their hearts, to acknowledge them as their pastors, as their leaders. No, therefore, post-positive inferential, therefore, keep knowing. Tus toyotus. Here's the accusative direct object. Keep knowing such types, such people. And what does it mean by epignoste? I just mentioned it right now, is to know them and recognize them inside of your heart as leaders, people of authority. Timothy's on his way. He's not there yet. But recognize Stephana. They were there present with Paul at the moment, but they're back in Corinth already. And now, verse 19, he begins the greetings. So we have how many verses right now? Okay, verse 24, yes. Verse 19. Aspasontai. So we have here the nominative. Hi, ecclesi. You want to see the verb? Yes, they mean the verse. The churches in the province of Asia, send you greetings. Aquila, and Priscilla greet you warmly in the Lord, and so does the church that meets at their houses. Let's look at this, even though it's easy Greek. So, hi ecclesiae deis Asias. So here's the churches. This is the feminine plural, nominative case. The local churches, and then genitive of place, of Asias, Asia. But what is this? Is it talking about Asia all the way up here as we know it? No, it's talking about the Roman province of Asia. This was called the Roman province of Asia. Before the Turks arrived, the Turks have nothing to do with the ancient people that live here, the Carians, the Phrygians, etc. This became the Roman province of Asia, and it was called Asias. This is where Paul is in Ephesus, and he has established a whole lot of local churches there. And as he's writing from Ephesus to Corinth, he's telling them all the churches in Asias greet you, Corinthians. So we have aspatsontai, present, active, indicative of aspatsomai. The churches in Asia greet, accusative direct object, humas, greet y'all.